So what's happening is you've got AH, which is your acid. Just going to highlight the proton in here, which is hydrogen. You've got this reacting with water, which is H2O. And this forms something. Okay, so your job is to write down what products does this form. So you need to understand that we're dealing with an acid. And we know that when we dissolve an acid in water, we're going to have a few things happening. The first thing is that we're going to be able to see a conjugate, or let's write down, we're going to have a proton, or in this case, the hydronium ion. Okay, so it doesn't always have to be hydronium. It can also be, so this is just means or, it could be the hydrogen ion. Okay, so that's just one of the products that's going to form. Product number one. You're also going to have something else forming, which we just found out now about the empty block. This is going to be your conjugate base. Okay, so you know in general, we have two things forming here. One has to be that ion, the other has to be the conjugate base. So how do we figure out the chemical formulas for these two? Well, let's start by looking at what's combining. Let's just do that in a different color. So if we have the H, the hydrogen ion here, that is being donated to water, it's basically leaving the acid, it's leaving A, and it's joining the H2O. So in simple terms, what's happening is you're left with the A minus here because the hydrogen ion has left, and that hydrogen ion joined H2O. So now instead of H2O, you've got 3 hydrogen ions. So this becomes H3O. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. If this still doesn't help, let's just do it in a picture form. You've got an acid here, you've got your H ion. This is combining with water, which is H2O. Okay, what is happening is this hydrogen ion is leaving the acid and it's joining this here. So what you have left over is your acid plus, you remember your acid now with a sign, with a valency left over, and you're left with H3O. Okay, so this is your ion. So that's as best as I can explain it before we go into the reactions. You need to understand this before you start looking at the chemical formulas. Okay, so the same thing happens for a base. I'm not sure if I put a base equation here. Okay, I didn't. But basically, what happens here is if I were to do this in terms of a base, let's just quickly write down the general equation only. So if I were talking about a base here, you would have A minus plus water giving you something. So in a base, we know that, let's just write it here. So if you have a base plus water, you're going to form two things. The first thing you're going to form is your remember, let's go back to the previous. When you have base here, it's firstly going to form the hydroxide ion. So you're always going to end up with the ion, but in this case, it's going to be hydroxide ion. So now remember, whenever I say hydroxide and hydrogen and what is the other one, hydronium, you need to already know what chemical formulas I'm talking about. So if you don't know, make a list of those because those are the most important we always refer to. And you need to know whenever I'm saying hydroxide ion, I'm talking about this. So you're going to have the hydroxide ion here, plus you're going to have something we refer to now as the conjugate acid. Alright, so if we were to finish up this equation on top here, you've got A minus plus H2O. Remember, what does a base do? A base accepts hydrogen. Instead of donating, because it has nothing to donate, it takes one of these hydrogen ions from the water. Okay, it accepts it there. So what we have left over is, you're obviously going to have OH minus, because the H is leaving here, so you're left with just oxygen and hydrogen, plus you're going to have AH, because the hydrogen left and it joined the A. So you're going to have this. So notice that whenever we're dealing with an acid and a base reaction, I want you to just take a look at the products here. you're always going to have a conjugate acid and a base, or you're always going to have an acid and a conjugate base. So this means that whenever you have an acid-base reaction taking place, you're always going to be able to identify the acid-base pair. Okay, so with all of that said and the general equations, remember we didn't use any chemical formulas just yet.